Have you ever really stopped to think about what music actually is? I mean, what's the journey of a single note from a violin string all the way to the feeling it creates inside your mind? Well, we're about to dive into that incredible journey using the classic work Science and Music by Sir James Jeans to explore the hidden architecture of sound. It all kicks off with this pretty mind-bending idea, which Sir James himself put perfectly. This curve is the symphony, neither more nor less. Just think about that for a second. The huge, rich sound of a full orchestra, a person's voice, even something like a cough. You can boil every single sound down to one single squiggly line on a graph. So our first step on this adventure is to really get what he means by a symphony in a curve. This sound curve, as he calls it, holds all the secrets: the pitch of a note, how loud it is, and its unique quality. Our mission right now is to decode what this thing actually represents. So what is this curve? It's not some abstract math thing. It's a literal map of air pressure changing over time. The peaks of the curve, that's when the air molecules are all squished together in high pressure. And the valleys, that's when they're spread apart in low pressure. This physical wave of pushing and pulling the air is what literally travels across the room and hits our eardrum. Okay, but wait. If every sound is just a single curve, why do different things sound so different? Well, the answer is in breaking that one complex curve down into its basic ingredients. And that gets us to the really big question, right? What gives an instrument its unique voice? Why does a flute playing a middle C sound so completely different from a violin playing that exact same note? The secret is a concept called timbre. The first ingredient is pretty simple. It's the fundamental tone. This is the main frequency of the note, the one that tells our brain what the pitch is. By itself, it's a pure, almost boring sound, kind of like what you get from a tuning fork. It's just a perfect, smooth sine wave. But music is almost never just that one pure tone. The second and way more interesting ingredient is harmonics. You might also hear them called overtones. These are a whole bunch of fainter, higher pitch notes that are layered right on top of that fundamental, and their frequencies are always perfect whole number multiples of the main note. So think of it like a recipe. This is how you get an instrument's unique character, its timbre. You start with your base ingredient, that pure fundamental tone. Then you start adding the spices, a very specific blend of harmonics. A little of the second harmonic, a pinch of the third, maybe a dash of the fifth. You mix all these simple waves together, and boom, you get that one-of-a-kind complex sound curve that our brain instantly recognizes as a violin, or a piano, or a voice. And each harmonic adds its own specific flavor to the mix. The second harmonic, that adds clarity and brilliance. The third gives it that hollow kind of nasal quality. That's the clarinet's whole deal right there. The fifth adds a rich horn-like sound. And once you get up to the seventh and higher, they can start to sound a little rough, even metallic. So an instrument's sound, it's really just its unique recipe of these harmonics. All right, so the instrument has cooked up its unique sound curve. Now let's follow that wave as it actually travels from the instrument all the way to our ears. That wave moves through the air at a very specific speed, about 1,100 feet per second. Now that sounds fast, but it is not instantaneous. It's the whole reason you see lightning way before you hear the thunder. And in a big concert hall, this can actually create tiny time lags between different parts of an orchestra. That's something a conductor really has to manage. And that journey is not just a straight line. As the sound wave travels, it's bouncing off of everything. It hits a hard wall and reflects, creating an echo. It hits a heavy curtain and gets soaked up or absorbed. This whole interaction, that's the science of acoustics, and it totally shapes how music sounds in a room. So the sound wave has finally crossed the room. It has arrived at its final stop before the brain. Let's explore this absolute marvel of biology, the ear. And this brings up a fascinating new puzzle. The instrument went to all that trouble to combine a bunch of simple waves into one complex curve. How on earth does the ear reverse that whole process? How does it unmix that complex wave back into its original ingredients? Well, at first, it's all mechanical. The pressure wave comes in and makes the eardrum vibrate. Then that vibration gets passed to 3 tiny little bones that act like levers, making the vibration stronger. They push on a tiny membrane, which sends a wave into this amazing snail-shaped organ called the cochlea. And this, right here, is where the real magic happens. Sir James Jeans had this brilliant analogy for the cochlea. He called it a biological sound analyzer, a miniature grand piano, all coiled up into the size of a pea. So how many strings does this tiny little piano have? Get this, 24,000. What is just amazing is that each one of these 24,000 nerve fibers is tuned to a very specific frequency. So just like hitting a key on a piano only makes one string vibrate, an incoming sound wave only makes the matching fibers in your cochlea vibrate. Your ear is basically performing a real-time analysis, deconstructing that one complex curve back into the fundamental tone and all of its individual harmonics. It's incredible. The physical journey is pretty much done. The cochlea has sorted out all the frequencies. But now we come to the final, and honestly, the most surprising step in this whole process, where the physical world of vibrations becomes the subjective world of what we feel and hear. Because here's the twist. It turns out the ear is not just a perfect passive microphone. It's an active participant. It's actually creating part of what we hear. It has this slight imperfection, a flaw, that turns out to be one of its most important features. This flaw leads to something called difference tones. When two different notes hit your ear at the same time, its structure doesn't just vibrate at those two frequencies. It also creates a third, phantom tone, a ghost note whose frequency is the difference between the two real notes. It's a sound that literally doesn't exist in the air outside your head. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. Your ear is literally inventing notes that aren't there. What you think of as hearing is actually a collaboration, a duet between the outside world and your own biology. And this isn't just some weird little fact. It's incredibly useful. The book gives this amazing example. Early telephones, they couldn't reproduce the low fundamental frequencies of a human voice. They could only transmit the higher-pitched harmonics. But it didn't matter. The listener's ear would hear those high notes and automatically recreate the missing bass note as a difference tone, making the voice sound full and easy to understand. A biological flaw is what made the technology work. Which brings us to our final thought. We've gone from a single curve in the air to a symphony of resonating fibers in our ear, to phantom tones being created by our own biology. What an incredible journey. And it leaves us with this question. If the music isn't just in the air, but is also being created inside your head, what are you really listening to?